Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Thanks for watching and listening wherever you are. We appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to us, please, on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We are out there. And on YouTube and Facebook, we're out there. On YouTube, it's at Doug Billings. On Facebook, it's at The Right Side with Doug Billings. We're also now on Rumble. So head on over to Rumble at The Right Side with Doug Billings. And, of course, Twitter and Parler and all of those places as well. So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, there was never any intent by our founding fathers to have what I call this political class of people, the permanent political class of elected officials who are currently governing our republic. In fact, the intent of the founders was exactly the opposite of what this whole thing has morphed into today, and it has never become more clear to me than it is right now. And it took the COVID-19 relief package that has been going back and forth like a tennis ball at a tennis match between the Democratic Socialist Communist Party and the Republican Party for the last several months, most of the year, in fact. You know, you'll recall, and I'll talk about this in a moment, that it's the new Democratic Socialist Communist Party who have wrecked the economy, shut everything down, and as a result, we find ourselves in this economic wreckage, this shutdown of businesses and so forth. And watching the debate going back and forth over the last few days, it was abundantly clear to me, and I'm sure it's abundantly clear to many of you as well, that what we need now more than ever in this republic are term limits. Term limits have got to be seriously looked at and adopted in both houses of Congress. I mean, the ridiculousness of a lifelong elected official flies in the face of everything that the Founding Fathers intended. And what's more than all of that, perhaps, it's just darn right dangerous. And I think the founders realized it, and we are failing to realize it at this very moment. What we are left with, I think, is a party of socialists and communists and another party of rhinos and globalists. I think, you know, I'm a consumer of history. I think most of you who watch and listen to this program are fans and connoisseurs of history. I think that most of you enjoy having a certain historical perspective in your life and in your approach to life, especially American life within our republic. I understand that socialism and communism are two diametrically opposed ideologies, and they're not generally, in the eyes of history, considered to be compatible with each other. But they've been combined in today's world, and in our republic especially, morphed into this new American political party. I've called it for months now, really since the beginning of the year, the Democratic Socialist Communist Party. And they're not only hungry for power and to remain in power, but they want to wholly and fundamentally transform America completely away from what the founders had intended, what the founders had fought for, what they died for, and what they swore to defend with their sacred honor. You know, we have right now, if we look at President Trump, really the first American president. You know, I would say George Washington, up until the time of Trump, was widely considered by American patriots to be the greatest of all of them of the presidents. You clearly would have Ronald Reagan in that mix, Abraham Lincoln, and so forth. Trump is mentioned in that group. You know, like it or not, President Trump is viewed as one of, if not the greatest presidents of all time. And I think if we look to the first president for a role model with regard to this whole thing about term limits, we have to believe that Washington knew. We believe because Washington stepped away from it all. He had to know that term limits had to be a part of the career of any American politician, and he set the best example, the perfect example of how to do this. I mean, Washington could have served as president for the rest of his life after his election. But he realized that in doing that, he would be setting exactly the kind of precedent that they had just fought to put an end to, a tyrannical monarchy. He didn't want the president and the presidency to become a monarch or a monarchy. So George Washington gives us the perfect example. Stepped away after 2 terms, and that was it. Went back to his farm and to his life at Mount Vernon, and there it was. So the example of the founders' intent of limited service of all politicians, really, but especially Congress and the presidency, I think we need to recall that example, we need to study it, and we need to implement it. And you know how I know which president really fits the ideal of the founders and what they imagined the presidency to be? They imagined, I think the founders did, that the American presidents would be much like what we see in Donald Trump. I mean, he fits the mold of almost all of the founders anyway. Independently wealthy, a person who built a successful business. He's willing to go later in life to serve his country for a short period of time, 1-2 terms, and then he's done. Then he gets out of politics. He does not make it a career. These are many of the things for which we liked about President Trump and why we elected him to the presidency. So I don't know about you, but I am determined that as I look at our right side, our Republican Party, I am determined to act with determined patriotism. Determined patriotism to root out the rhinos, root out the globalists from the Trump Party. And the Trump Party is, in fact, the Republican Party. A number of patriots out there, you guys are calling for this third party nonsense. And I understand, and don't be offended when I say nonsense. I understand where you're coming from. I understand that you're coming from a sense of patriotism, first of all, love for our country. Second of all, you're incredibly frustrated with the rhinos and with the globalists and with the entire system comprised of people who have made politics their career, who have apparently not put us first. Their constituents, the citizenry of this republic, they have not put us first. I get it. You're frustrated. You don't trust, now with this past election, you don't trust the voting systems and mechanisms that we have in place. You feel as if your vote is wasted, and you want to begin a third party and call it the MAGA party or the Patriot Party. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, that would be a huge, huge mistake. I mean, it would immediately give more political power and victories to the new Democratic Socialist Communist Party, first of all. Second, it would take decades for a third party to become viable. So logistically, it's just going to take too damn long. And then finally, the intellectual immaturity of it is here side by side because Trump, when you think about it, Trump has already reimagined the Republican Party into what we want it to be. Trump is the vision of the party, and it's the Republican Party. He got almost 100 million votes, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to convince me that that's not a reimagining of the Republican Party. It's already, the Republican Party is in stark contrast to the anti-American ideologies of the new Democratic Socialist Communist Party. If you want to take a look at the vast differences between the two parties that we have today, let's start, first of all, with the new Democratic Socialist Communist Party. They're dedicated and decidedly anti-American. They've divorced themselves from the American Republic. You don't believe me? They have. Since the early 1980s, they've wanted to separate themselves. They've wanted to transform America. Really, they wanted to start doing this in the 1960s, but it was very covert, very under wraps. You never really heard about it in the mainstream. It was all kind of festering underneath the mainstream. But in the 1980s, it took on a bigger form, a bigger platform. It became more visible, and they wanted to move away from what the founders did. But in the last 10 years, this whole thing has been just incredibly accelerated. And especially since the first Marxist president that we had, Barack Hussein Obama, took office, now the new Democratic Socialist Communist Party is intently and fundamentally transforming America. It's like as if they're on steroids. And it's not covert anymore. It's out in the open. They don't make any bones about it. You've got even long-term politician Chuck Schumer out there ranting and raving on the streets. Today we take Washington, tomorrow we take Georgia, and we're going to fundamentally change America. That's what they want to do. They're not lying to you. Take them at their word. They want to transform America away from what the Founding Fathers left us. Just look at what they did this past year in terms of how they want to transform America and in terms of how they've divorced themselves from America. Number one, they used a virus to instill fear in us, to wreck an economy, to shut down your businesses, and to ruin your livelihoods. Number two, they supported domestic terror groups, and you know what I'm talking about. Number three, they supported and funded the riots, the looting, the statue toppling, arson, and anarchy. Number four, the New Democratic Socialist Communist Party, in partnership with their allies, the media and the celebrity class, bailed out anarchists who were in jail this summer for all of that stuff that I just mentioned: statue toppling, arson, anarchy, rape, murder, Chaz, chop. You know what I'm talking about. The New Democratic Socialist Party elites, along with the celebrity class, bailed those people out of jail so that they could continue the carnage. Number five, the New Democratic Socialist Communist Party refused to negotiate a COVID relief package of any substance over the summer and during this year because they didn't want the American citizens to think that Trump was responsible for giving you that relief. They focused on anarchy and arson all summer long and failed to go to the negotiation table. Nancy Pelosi said it herself that she didn't want to give Trump that victory. For purely political reasons, she denied you that relief. And remember, the riots, the looting, even the George Floyd incident, all catastrophes that the Democrat, Socialist, Communist Party used against the American people. And you see them posting on social media, the Democratic Socialist Communist Party. Well, Trump is out golfing and Trump's not signing the relief package. BS. First of all, anybody with any sense about them knows that you can golf and get more done sometimes there than you can in the office. To think that the president isn't multitasking, in touch, and in control when he's on the golf course is intellectually immature. Second of all, it's the Democratic Party focused on all of those things that I just mentioned all summer long, the destruction of our republic, who've divorced themselves from us, who are doing all of those things, supporting all of those things, the anarchy, the bailing out of criminals, etc., who didn't want any kind of relief. So it's absolute, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. You might not hear anybody else talk about this. Certainly the mainstream media is not. But those are some of the reasons how and why the Democratic Socialist Communist Party is no longer an American political party. They've divorced themselves from us by fire. They've divorced themselves by fire from our republic. Now, if you compare them to us, to the right side, it's night and day. The Republican Party, patriots, we can gather by the hundreds upon hundreds of thousands, and no riot breaks out. No one is assaulted unless the other side starts it. There's no riots, there's no looting, there's no arson, nobody's toppling any statues, there's not even any trash left behind to clean up when the right side, the Republican Party, has a huge gathering. Let me describe this in another way for you, ladies and gentlemen. If any of us patriots, you think about this, if any of us patriots were to put on a red MAGA hat and walk down the street of almost any town in America, we would stand a fair chance, a high chance, I think, of being assaulted, either assaulted verbally, physically, or both. And yet the intellectually immature members of the Democratic Socialist Communist Party and their fake news media allies call the Republicans the evil side. BS. It's exactly the opposite. The Republican Party is the party of God, light, and hope. The Democratic Socialist Communist Party is clearly the party of burning America, of transforming America away from the Founding Fathers. The actions of the Democratic Socialist Communist Party boil down to really, I think, the last 4 generations of parents who've created what I call the Wussification of America. Wussification with a W. But it would be just fine with me, ladies and gentlemen, if you take out the W and put in a P for that word, the Wussification of America. I'll let you think about that. But if you don't, you can't really get a better idea of what we're talking about unless you imagine parents of the last 4 or so generations of kids completely wussifying all of these new generations, especially the men. I got to tell you, the Democratic Socialist Communist Party, the men of the left have voluntarily given up their testosterone. They're practically, I think, gender and intellectually neutral in almost everything they do in life. Generations of parents have created now snowflakes and Karens who can only cry and complain when, and they certainly can't deal with things that don't go their way. They can't deal with adversity. They certainly can't stand handling or seeing someone like us in a red MAGA hat walking down the street. Can you imagine being so incredibly wussified that you surrender your control of all of your emotions with regards to seeing a hat? Or that you have a mental meltdown because of a bumper sticker or a Trump banner or anything that you see for which you disagree or which has some sort of a message for which you feel offended. You know, people get offended every day and can deal with it on the right side. But that's what the left has created in their youth. We've seen it all summer long. The shouting, the mobs, the defunding the police. We saw it at 2016 when Trump won, the breakdown, the crying, the tears. And they're not going to let that happen again. They're going to fix everything, right, Dominion? They're going to fix everything so that doesn't happen again. No way in hell they're going to go through that again. Beginning back in the days when the participation trophy was promoted, this is when it all really happened. So to sum that up, liberal parents have taught their kids that challenges and adversity, competition are unfair. Unfair. You shouldn't have to go through all of that to get what you want. People should just give it to you. People should just give you everything you want. Free college. We're going to take care of it. We're going to give you free money to pay back your college debt. We're going to give you $2,000 for the next 2 years. I saw Ilhan Omar post that today. Going to give you lots of free stuff. And in the meantime, when we're giving you all of this free stuff, we're going to rob you of your dignity. Because that's what free stuff does. It robs human beings of their dignity. When you can't work, compete, and attain things on your own, you have no dignity. Yeah, but people on the left have tried to avoid all of those things because they feel as if they have to go through competition or adversity or tragedy. Their life would be shattered and ruined. It's exactly the opposite of how the truth is. Facing challenges, looking adversity square in the eyes, having competition can enhance your life and build up character and make a more fully functioning and whole person. When liberal parents or organizations, schools, clubs, whatever, teach kids to avoid confrontation, adversity, challenges, they erase the concept of winning. Winning doesn't mean anything anymore. And you shouldn't want to win, by the way. That's why Trump's phrase, so much winning, really pisses them off. That just makes it's like your fingernails on a chalkboard to them to hear. We're gonna have so much winning. Well, you're not supposed to compete to win in their world, in the liberal world. In academics and sports and relationships and the job market or in life in general, you're just not supposed to compete. Everything is supposed to be given to you, free, gratis. Then when they do face a loss, they have complete mental meltdowns. They don't know it. They have no coping skills. They can't handle it. It leads to tears. It leads to emotional paralysis, or it leads to rage and anger, which played itself out all year long this year. You saw it and I saw it. And the reason for it was because our nation has become wussified by liberal parents who don't spank their kids, discipline their kids, or teach them how to face adversity and challenges with honor and courage and accept the outcome and be able to glean from all of those things the blessings that they hold. And if you think that challenges and adversities and tragedies don't hold blessings, you're not thinking right. It leads to them creating the anarchy, the riots, and the looting, this inability to cope with loss or not getting your way, toppling statues because you don't like history, defunding the police, all because the people of the left can't tolerate the authority figures that are out there, right? That's the whole defund the police deal. Well, the riots that we witnessed this year were sponsored and encouraged by the Democratic Socialist Communist Party. They were carried out by people whose lives were ruined by parents who didn't give enough of a damn to teach their kids how to face and deal with adversity. And because they don't know how to deal with anything like that, they shut down and wreck the economy, and the leadership, the party elites, and the local state leaders that belong to the Democratic Socialist Communist Party let them do it because they thought that it would hurt President Trump. And your livelihoods be damned. And your livelihoods now are ruined. We Republicans need to act with determined patriotism to continue the reimagining of the Republican Party that President Trump has started, to get back to the roots of the founders, to term limits, to no political class anymore, and a purposeful retaliation of rhinos and globalists to be played out at the ballot box, which we also have to fix. We have to fix the ballot box. And by fixing, I don't mean to fix to make improper. I mean fix to make sure that what we know we voted for counts. Don't think that we need a third party. Waste of time, waste of energy. Determined patriotism to root out the rhinos and the globalists. No term limits. That's all we've got for today, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to know that when you focus daily on that pack of blessings, if you focus on those blessings and you've got a pack of them on your back, the blessings and the challenges and adversities that you have are blessings waiting to be born. And perhaps that's the best way to put it. Every challenge that we face, every adversity, tragedy, every success, every triumph are blessings waiting to be born. And that really is the difference between us and them, right? We see our work, the way that we overcome, the way that we compete, the way that we win brings blessing and joy, and all that's rooted in God himself. That's what God intends for us, blessings. The other side barely believes in any kind of divine providence or power, and I would wager to say that they really don't. Otherwise, they wouldn't behave the way that they do. But I want you to focus and remember always, I end every show by telling you you've got a pack of blessings on your back, and I believe that you do. Please, let's pray for each other. Let's pray that we have determined patriotism. Pray for the Republican Party and that we can transform it as Trump has started to do. Don't abandon it, and don't start a third one. Let's pray for each other. Let's pray for President Trump and this republic. January 6th is fast approaching, and let's see what happens. God bless you, everybody. Thank you for watching The Right Side with Doug Billings. We are in need of sponsors. We've started a GoFundMe page. Please stop by, won't you? We need this message to continue. We've been named one of the top new podcasts for a political conservative commentary format, and we're grateful for that. But we need help. We need a little bit of help to keep the message going. God bless you. And we'll meet again right here on The Right Side with Doug Billings. Cheers.